Have you ever had this experience? You feel calm and clear while meditating, but the moment you stand up from the cushion, messages, pressure, emotions, and habits rush in and swallow you whole? Have you ever wondered why you can chant, sit, study, feel inspired for a while, and yet most of your life still runs on autopilot? As if your practice self and your real life self are two different people? Welcome back to the channel, my friend. Today we are going to walk right into this gap between practice time and ordinary time. Because the original teaching behind this video says something very surprising. The most important part of spiritual practice does not happen when you are formally practicing. It happens when you think you are not practicing. It happens in the elevator, in the supermarket, on your phone, in arguments, in traffic, in those small, forgettable moments when you are choosing how to speak, how to think, how to react. In other words, your destiny is not being written only during your 10 or 20 minutes of meditation or prayer. It is being written in those hundreds of tiny choices you make when nobody is watching, whether you send that angry message, whether you gossip, whether you pause before judging, whether you scroll endlessly instead of feeling what is really in your heart. So in this long, story-based conversation, we will explore what everyday awareness practice really means, how it can quietly turn the direction of your life, and why awakening, wisdom, cause and effect, compassion, practice, and destiny all converge in those moments when you think, I am just living. This is not spiritual at all. If you have ever thought, I can be calm on the cushion, but I lose it in real life, this video is for you. You might discover that the place where you feel you are failing is actually the exact place where real practice finally begins. Let us start with a very familiar picture. Imagine someone named Alex. In the morning, before work, Alex sets a timer, sits on a cushion, and follows the breath for 15 minutes. The mind jumps around, but with some effort, the attention returns again and again. At the end, there is a small sense of peace. Alex feels, yes, I am practicing. I am serious about my spiritual path. Then the day begins. Emails flood in. A co-worker writes something in a group chat that sounds disrespectful. The old anger rises. Before any awareness can intervene, Alex fires back a sharp reply. A few minutes later, there is regret. But instead of really looking at it, the mind distracts itself with coffee and scrolling. On the train home, someone bumps into Alex without apologizing. The body tenses. The mind grumbles. People are so rude. A story of victimhood runs for 20 minutes. By the time Alex gets home, a heavy mood has formed. At night, a family member says something careless. The day's accumulated frustration explodes. Voices rise. Doors close. After everything calms down, Alex sits in bed and thinks, why do I practice at all if I still react like this? Maybe I am not spiritual enough. Maybe I am just pretending. From the outside, this looks like failure. But from the deeper perspective of practice, this is actually the real classroom. The cushion in the morning was preparation. The day itself was the exam. The problem is not that Alex fails the exam. Everyone fails many times. The problem is that Alex does not realize that this is the exam. Alex still thinks real practice only happens in the morning, and the rest of the day is just life. The original teaching we are expanding from says very clearly practice is not just something you do. It is someone you become. And you become it not only on the cushion, but minute by minute, in ordinary situations. By bringing a small flame of awareness into places where you used to be completely asleep, Let us slow down and look at this more carefully. When we hear words like practice, awakening, or spiritual path, many of us picture special scenes. A person sitting cross-legged in a quiet room, eyes closed, incense burning. A retreat center in the mountains, a temple, a silent hall. In those places, it feels natural to be calm, to watch the breath, to think about wisdom, compassion, and cause and effect. The mind is in practice mode, but the moment we step into ordinary life, practice mode turns off. At least, that is what we think. We tell ourselves, right now I am not practicing, I am working. Right now I am not practicing, I am parenting. Right now I am not practicing, I am just tired, scrolling, surviving. This invisible switch in the mind is one of the main reasons our destiny does not change as fast as we hope. We are spiritual for 1 hour and unconscious for 15. The momentum of those 15 hours is obviously stronger. What would change if that switch disappeared? If practice in life were no longer to categories in your head, instead of splitting the day into holy time and normal time, you begin to see each moment as belonging to the same field of awareness. Sometimes you sit quietly and train the mind in a formal way. Sometimes you speak, move, work, and respond. But in both cases, you know that seeds are being planted. You know that cause and effect is always operating, not just in the meditation hall. Let us walk through a simple, powerful idea: everyday awareness practice. Everyday awareness practice is not about adding 100 new tasks to your already busy schedule. It is about changing the way you inhabit the tasks you already have. You still brush your teeth, but now you feel the water, the taste, the movements. Instead of thinking through your to-do list, you still commute. But now you use some of that time to observe your breath, your posture, your mood. Instead of feeding irritation or boredom, you still work. But now you notice what happens in your body before you send a sharp message. You notice the tightening in your chest, the story forming in your mind. Even if you still react, you begin to see the pattern. This is practice when you think you are not practicing. To make this real, let us tell the story of someone who discovered this only after years of separating spiritual life and ordinary life. Her name is Emma. For a long time, she believed that true practice happened only during retreats or long meditation sessions. She saved money and vacation time to attend silent retreats twice a year. There, surrounded by silence and nature, she felt peaceful and inspired. She took notes, made vows, and promised herself, "When I go back, I will keep this state." But within days of returning home, she would find herself shouting at traffic, complaining about co-workers, staying up late on her phone, forgetting almost everything she had realized at the retreat. After a few years, a painful thought began to grow. Maybe my practice is fake. Maybe I only pretend to change in those special environments. Real life brings out my true self, and my true self is just impatient and self-centered. One evening, she shared her frustration with an older practitioner who had quietly walked the path for decades. The older practitioner listened and then asked a question that changed everything. "When you are at retreat," she said, "you watch the breath, the thoughts, the sounds. You see them come and go, right?" "Yes," Emma replied. "And when you are in traffic or in the office, what do you watch?" Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" The older practitioner smiled gently. "That is exactly the point. At retreat, you practice watching. At home, you stop watching. You let the mind run wherever it wants. It is not that the retreat is fake and home is real. It is that you do not bring who you are at the retreat into your home. You treat awareness as something you only take out in special occasions, like a fancy outfit. But awareness is supposed to become your everyday clothing. She continued, real practice is not proven by how calm you feel in a silent hall. It is proven by what you remember in the middle of noise, pressure, and emotions. When you think I am not practicing right now, that is usually the moment when practice is most needed. These words hit Emma like a bell. For the first time, she saw that she had been unconsciously turning practice on and off like a switch. From that day, she made a quiet decision. She did not add extra hours of formal meditation. Instead, she decided that she would treat her whole day as a kind of walking meditation, not in a forced, stiff way, but as an ongoing experiment. When she washed dishes, she tried to feel the water and stay with the sensations instead of rushing in her head to the next task. When she walked from her desk to the printer, she felt her feet touching the ground instead of letting thoughts pull her away completely. When irritation appeared, she tried to notice it in the body and name it silently. Irritation is here. Even if she still reacted, she at least knew she was reacting. At first, she failed constantly. She would remember for a few seconds, then forget for hours. But each time she remembered, she whispered to herself, right now, this moment is practice. Months passed. Nothing dramatic happened on the outside. She still lived in the same apartment, worked the same job, dealt with the same people. But inside, something subtle and profound was changing. Instead of feeling that real life dragged her away from practice, she began to feel that real life was practice. The traffic jam was not a mistake in the universe. It was her patience training. The annoying co-worker was not an obstacle to spirituality. That co-worker was her compassion raining. The boring task was not a meaningless waste of time. It was her perseverance training. Her destiny began to shift, not because she had moved to a mountaintop, but because her mind had moved into a different relationship with every moment. Now, let us look at why this kind of daily awareness practice is so powerful from the viewpoint of cause and effect. Every day, your mind is constantly generating seeds through your thoughts, words, and actions. These seeds do not disappear. They fall into the soil of your consciousness and, given time and conditions, they sprout as moods, habits, and external events. If most of your day is spent in unconscious reactions, then most of your seeds are being planted unconsciously. You get irritated, you complain, you judge, you speak carelessly, you distract yourself in ways that harm your body or mind. Each of these moments may seem small, but cause and effect does not measure by drama. It measures by repetition. On the other hand, every time you bring awareness to an ordinary moment, you are planting a different kind of seed. You are in a supermarket line and you notice impatience rising. You feel your feet on the ground. You take a breath. You relax your jaw, and you choose not to mentally attack the cashier. Seed, you are tempted to say something cruel in an argument. You feel your chest tighten. You notice the urge. You say something honest, but not poisonous instead. Seed, you are scrolling through your phone late at night, about to fall into another hour of mindless consumption. You notice the emptiness behind the urge. Put the phone down and turn to your breath for 5 minutes. Seed, most people underestimate these tiny shifts. They want big, dramatic changes, visions, miracles, instant transformation. They look down on the humble act of noticing one breath, restraining one word, choosing one kinder thought. But from the viewpoint of cause and effect, these tiny acts are exactly what shape your destiny. It is like steering a ship. A small change in direction, maintained over long distances, leads to a completely different shore. Everyday awareness practice is the small change in direction. Destiny is the distant shore. Now, let us bring in another important thread: the connection between this kind of practice and compassion. Many people think of compassion as a feeling you either have or do not have. But in spiritual traditions, compassion is also seen as a skill that can be trained, breath by breath, moment by moment, especially in ordinary interactions. Every time you choose to notice your own suffering instead of numbing it, you are training compassion toward yourself. Every time you choose to remember that the person in front of you also has fears, wounds, and dreams, you are training compassion toward others. This training does not happen only in formal rituals. It happens while you are waiting in line, answering emails, listening to a friend's troubles, or dealing with your own frustrations. Think of a simple scene at work. A colleague sends you a message that sounds cold and critical. Your first reaction is to feel attacked. The old script in your mind appears: they do not respect me. They are always like this. I must defend myself. If you follow that script automatically, you will likely respond in a defensive or passive-aggressive way. The tension between you and the colleague will increase. Both of you will carry that stress into other areas of your life. Seed after seed of division will be planted. But if you have been practicing everyday awareness, there might be a small gap between receiving the message and reacting. In that gap, you may remember to breathe. You may notice your own hurt and silently say to yourself, "Ouch, that stings." Then, you might remember that the colleague is also under pressure. You do not use this to justify their behavior, but to widen your perspective. You choose to respond with clarity instead of attack. You write, "I see your point about the mistake. Let us talk about how to fix it. Also, in the future, I would appreciate if we could discuss issues like this in a more detailed way so I can understand your concerns clearly." This response is not weak. It is both honest and respectful. It does not continue the chain of aggression. This is everyday compassion practice. It changes your own mind, your colleague's mind, and the overall atmosphere of your workplace. Over time, the cumulative effect of such interactions shifts the direction of everyone's destiny just a little. Now, let us look at one more powerful theme from the original teaching: the idea that daily awareness can actually change your destiny, not in a magical, wishful way, but in a very realistic way. Destiny is often imagined as something fixed and external. People say, "This is my lot in life. I was born into this family, this body, this society. Things happen to me and I have no power." From the perspective of cause and effect, your present situation is indeed influenced by many things. You did not consciously choose: genetics, childhood environment, collective events, even old karmic patterns. You cannot snap your fingers and erase all of that. But your destiny is not only those outer conditions. It is also the pattern of your responses to those conditions. And your responses are shaped, moment by moment, by your awareness. Imagine two people who both grew up in harsh, unstable households. Both carry fear and anger from childhood. Both experience setbacks in career and relationships. One person never examines their reactions. They sink into self-pity, blame others, and repeat the same destructive behaviors they learned growing up. They say, "This is just who I am." The other person, somewhere along the way, encounters teachings on awareness and cause and effect. They begin to notice their patterns, They feel the same anger and fear. But instead of acting on it blindly every time, they start to pause. They seek help. They learn to communicate. They practice small acts of courage and kindness every day. Do they still suffer? Yes. Do they still make mistakes? Of course. But over years, their path begins to look different. Their relationships are a little healthier. Their mind is a little more stable. They pass on less drama to the next generation. This difference did not come from a better horoscope or magical luck. It came from daily awareness practice. You cannot change where the river of your life began, but you can influence how it flows from here. Each moment of awareness is like placing a small stone in the river, gently changing its direction. Let us now move into a more intimate layer, how to actually practice this in your own day without turning your life into a complicated self-improvement project. You do not need complex systems. You can start with just 3 kinds of moments: transition moments, trigger moments, and quiet moments. Transition moments are those times when you move from one activity to another: waking up, entering the bathroom, stepping out the door, sitting down at your desk, opening your computer, getting into the car, arriving home. Most people rush through these moments on autopilot. Everyday awareness practice invites you to use them as small bells. When you wake up, before touching your phone, feel 3 breaths. When you sit down to eat, pause for 1 second and feel gratitude that you have food. When you arrive home, stand at the door for a heartbeat and remember, the way I walk into this room will affect everyone in it. These tiny pauses do not require extra time. They require a shift in attention. Trigger moments are those times when emotions flare. Someone criticizes you, traffic blocks you, your child refuses to listen, your partner says something tone deaf, a stranger is rude. These moments are usually where you forget you are a practitioner. You switch into fight, flight, or freeze. Everyday awareness practice invites you to use these triggers as training fields. You may not be able to stay calm. You may still raise your voice, but you can pay attention to the process. You can notice what thoughts appear, what your body does, what your urges are. Over time, simply noticing begins to soften the automatic chain, and a little space opens for different choices. Quiet moments are those few times in the day when you are not being pulled strongly by outside demands: waiting in line, sitting in a waiting room, walking down a hall, washing your hands. These are perfect chances to return to the breath, the body, and your deeper intention. Instead of grabbing your phone at every pause, you can sometimes decide, for this 1 minute, I will simply be here. None of this looks dramatic from the outside. Nobody gives you a medal for feeling your breath while brushing your teeth. But these micro practices slowly change the structure of your inner world. As awareness becomes more continuous, something beautiful happens. Your sense of practicing and not practicing fades. There will still be times when you sit formally to meditate or pray. These are like going to the gym to strengthen your hardened muscles. But the rest of the day is no longer a wild jungle where all your training disappears. It becomes your ongoing field of practice. Now, let us tie this back to the deeper spiritual themes. Awakening, in everyday terms, means waking up from the trance of automatic reactions and stories. Daily awareness practice is the way you repeatedly wake up, tiny bit by tiny bit, from that trance. Wisdom is not just knowing concepts. Wisdom is seeing, in the middle of a real situation, if I do this, more suffering will come. If I do that, more peace will come. Daily awareness practice trains this kind of wisdom over and over. Cause and effect is not a distant doctrine. It is the simple truth that what you cultivate today becomes your reality tomorrow. Daily awareness practice is how you make sure you are not planting weeds without noticing. Compassion is not only a high ideal, it is the everyday willingness to understand yourself and others, to soften when you could harden, to listen when you could attack. Daily awareness practice makes compassion practical in your actual conversations. Practice is not limited to formal rituals. It is this continuous effort to remember, return, and respond differently, especially when you least feel like it. Destiny is not an unchangeable script. It is the long-term result of what you repeatedly think, say, and do. Daily awareness practice is how you quietly rewrite that script, line by line. You might be wondering, as we move toward the end of this reflection, how all of this connects to your own life story. Maybe you are someone who has tried to meditate or pray, but you feel discouraged because you cannot maintain that state in daily life. Maybe you have thought, I am too scattered, too emotional, too ordinary to really walk a spiritual path. If that is you, I want to say this clearly: your scattered mind and messy life are not disqualifying you from practice. They are the exact material of your practice. The moment you notice, in the middle of your day, I am lost in worry again, and you take one conscious breath, you are practicing. The moment you catch yourself about to say something hurtful and you hold back, you are practicing. The moment you feel deep sadness and, instead of drowning it in distraction, use it quietly and let tears come while staying present, you are practicing. You do not have to be calm all the time to be a real practitioner. You have to be willing to come back again and again, even when you are not calm. I have heard many stories from people who only realized years later how powerful these small, daily choices were. Someone told me how, in a time of burnout and depression, they made one simple rule every morning. No matter how hopeless they felt, they would get up, open the window, take 3 conscious breaths, and silently wish for the well-being of all beings. They said, at the time, it felt pointless. My life was still a mess. But looking back, those 3 breaths were like a thin but unbroken thread that kept me connected to something larger than my suffering. Slowly, that thread led me out. Another person shared how, during a difficult period in their marriage, they decided to practice one tiny thing before answering their partner in an argument. They would touch their own heart with their hand for 1 second. They said, sometimes I still shouted, but that 1 second made me remember that I have a heart and my partner has a heart. Over time, it reduced the cruelty in our fights. It did not magically fix everything, but it changed the atmosphere enough that we could begin real conversations. These are examples of everyday awareness practice quietly changing destiny. So, as we close, I invite you to reflect on your own day, your own patterns, your own not practicing moments. Where do you most often forget yourself? While driving, while checking social media, at work, in certain relationships. Where do you feel? This has nothing to do with spirituality. This is just life. What if those places are exactly where your soul most wants you to wake up? You do not need to change everything at once. You can start with one small commitment. Maybe you decide, each time I open a door today, I will remember my breath. Maybe you decide, each time I feel anger in my chest, I will pause for 1 breath before acting. Maybe you decide, each evening before sleep, I will spend 2 minutes reviewing my day, not to judge myself, but to see where I was awakened, where I was asleep. These small, sincere acts are the way that not practicing time becomes real practicing time. Before you go, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever noticed that your most important spiritual lessons did not happen in a retreat, but in an argument, a mistake, a traffic jam, or a moment of ordinary boredom? Have you found a simple, everyday awareness habit that has quietly changed the way you live? If you feel safe to share, your story might be the mirror someone else needs to see their own daily life as a path. If this long video companion helped you feel that your ordinary day can be your spiritual path, I invite you to support this channel. You can subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, or consider becoming a member so we can continue creating deep, story-based content on awakening, wisdom, cause and effect, compassion, practice, and destiny. Most importantly, when this video ends, do not wait for the right moment to start practicing. Take one small moment from the rest of your day and turn it into practice. Feel one breath fully. Speak one word more kindly. Choose not to carry one old story into the next hour. In that simple choice, your ordinary time and your spiritual time begin to merge, and your destiny quietly starts to bend in a new direction. Every person carries a certain energy. Your focus, your dreams, your purpose. Bracelet is a physical reminder of that energy. Symbol you wear daily that pushes you to stay grounded, balanced, and aligned. If one of the bracelets caught your eye, you can order it through the link in the description and check more powerful styles on our homepage store. Choose the one that strengthens your journey.